All right, enough talk about the Yankees, Red Sox, and Dodgers. The Blue Jays and the Brewers just keep on winning.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us on Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. But the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTube page. Leave a comment, and I will do my best to answer or respond and use that hashtag Everyday Sully. It helps us keep track of everyone who's been leaving the comments. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Gametime. Today, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. So let's talk about the trivia question. Who was Ken Griffey Jr.'s first Major League manager? And we got a couple of people who incorrectly said Lou Piniella. That is not correct. Joshua Nichol 7643 says Jim Lefevre or Dick Williams is my guess for Junior's first manager. Well, Bill, pick one, buddy. Flip a coin. Flip a coin. Which one was it? They both managed the Mariners in the late 80s. Which one? Which one? And that leads us to Neil Manson's C63, Ken Griffey's first manager in the majors was Jim Lefevre, I think. Far-flung manager fan from Lerwick, Shetland, in the very far north of Scotland. What's up with everyone's indecision on this one? It was Jim Lefevre. Jim Lefevre, who came in, he was a bench coach under Tony La Russa, former Dodger, and one of these people who's a baseball lifer. They handed him the car keys in the late 90s when the Mariners put together some very interesting teams in the mid-1980s. They had some very good players on their team, players like Alvin Davis, Jim Presley, Danny Tarble came up through there, Phil Bradley. They had some interesting pitchers like Mark Langston and Mike Moore, and they were playing in a very winnable American League West, and yet they couldn't have it work together. The main problem was Mike Moore would have a great year, but Langston would have an off year, or Langston would have a great year, and Mike Moore would have an off year. If the two of them just had a great year at the same time, Seattle would have been a contending team. And they had an interesting infield with Alvin Davis at first, Harold Reynolds at second, Ray Quinones at short, Jim Presley as the third baseman, Scott Bradley as the catcher. They had some veterans, like Gorman Thomas for a little bit. They had Jeffrey Leonard for a little bit. And then they had outfielders like Phil Bradley, the aforementioned Danny Tarble. They would have like Mike Kingery. They had Mickey Brantley. Eventually, they had Jay Buhner, much to the anger of Frank Costanza. They always had interesting players, but for whatever reason, it didn't all click. It didn't all click until eventually, then they couldn't put a winning team on the field. They drafted Junior in, and then Jim Lefevre became the manager, and they had their first ever winning season under Jim Lefevre. And he was fired shortly after. It was replaced by Bill Plummer. And then Plummer was only there for 1 year. Then Lou Piniella took over, and eventually they got to the postseason. But, yes, it was Jim Lefevre. And the shirts they had when he was hired in 1989 said, "I'm a Lefevre believer." And it would explain that he had spelled his last name with VRE, so that's how they spelled believer. But, yes, it was Jim Lefevre who didn't manage that long. It was surprising. He looked like he was going to be one of those people who was going to be a lifelong manager. But alas, it didn't happen, but that is the correct answer. Yeah, we talk a lot about some of the big market teams beating, big series and everything like that. Red Sox won again today against Baltimore, and to the surprise of nobody, the Yankees clobbered the Nationals. And of course, the Yankees can't win in a way. If they clobber the Nationals, no one will care. But here's the thing: there are better teams in the Red Sox Nationals than a lot of these other teams I aforementioned. No team is better than the Milwaukee Brewers, as they beat Arizona 7-5. And in the American League, one of the top teams is the Toronto Blue Jays. And Max Scherzer took the mound for the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays wound up defeating the Minnesota Twins 10-4. It was a CB final score, 10-4. 10-4, good buddy. It was closer than that. It was 6-4 going to the bottom of the sixth inning. And Max Scherzer pitched well for the first 5 innings, then let up 4 runs. And then the Blue Jays did what you have to do, which is, okay, if it comes close, they put the aft thrusters on. Big game from Lukes, big game from Kirk, big game for Jimenez, who scored 3 runs himself. And the bullpen did the job, throwing 3 scoreless innings, and the final score was 10-4. Now, the Blue Jays have had some issues with their bullpen. I'm not saying their bullpen is necessarily bad, but they've had some issues with it. And I'm going to make a bold suggestion for the Toronto Blue Jays. And in the second section of this show, I'm going to make an eerily similar suggestion for the Milwaukee Brewers. We are going to be, the Blue Jays are making the postseason. They have a big lead over Boston right now. The Yankees aren't going to catch them. And you take a look at one of the great strengths that Toronto has, other than the fact that they have, Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is on the team, and he's having a good year. Not one of his MVP calibers, but he's having a good, solid year. Bo Bichette has been solid. They've been getting good performances from, George Springer went on a great roll. Alejandro Kirk is having a fine season. And it's a pretty evenly balanced attack. But one of the great strengths they have is they have some pitching depth. Max Scherzer is finding, who won today, is finding his way back, maybe not to his Cy Young caliber self, but is pretty solid. Kevin Gausman is pretty solid. Jose Barrios is pretty solid. Eric Lauer has been pretty solid. Chris Bassett is pretty solid. And they took a flyer on Shane Bieber, and he pitched really well his first game, 6 innings, 1 run, 2 hits. And not all of them are going to start. Realistically, only 4 of them are going to be starters. And I think that with some of the issues that the Blue Jays have had in their bullpen recently, I would right now move a couple of those pitchers that I just mentioned as starters into the pen to be one of the, like a super reliever, someone who come in and give you 2 or 3 innings. This is what Bruce Bochy did with Tim Lincecum when they won the World Series in 2012 with the San Francisco Giants. And Lincecum had a down year that year, and he became kind of a super reliever and did a really good job out of the bullpen. Cora in 2018 with the Red Sox basically used every starter in relief as well. But you saw Rick Porcello and also Nathan Eovaldi, but certainly Rick Porcello, who had won the Cy Young Award just 2 years prior, become someone who comes out of the bullpen, gives you a couple solid innings, and be a really solid pitcher like that. You saw Joe Torre do that with Ramiro Mendoza. Mendoza did a little bit of everything. He started, he closed, he was a middle reliever. But I think that if you have, let's just say, you're not going to use Scherzer out of the bullpen. You're not going to use Shane Bieber out of the bullpen. You're not going to use Kevin Gausman out of the bullpen. And you're not going to use Jose Barrios out of the bullpen. And you know your team is going to make it to the postseason in Toronto. So I would take Chris Bassett, Eric Lauer, and Bowden Francis now and put them into the bullpen and give them a month of getting used to this new role. You'd still have a full rotation, and you're not going to blow the big lead. You're not going to be able to do that. But you're able to have some of these pitchers take their new role and have a full month of learning how to do this and give the Blue Jays unbelievable pitching depth going into the playoffs, where you have Gausman, Barrios, Bieber, and Scherzer, and then a bunch of other really good pitchers coming out of the pen. Don't have it be a new role for them. You have a full month to say, here's what your role is going to be. And it's not a demotion. We need you in this role. We need you to say, you're going to give us 2 or 3 tonight. So come out and just, if you go through the order once, that's hopefully going to be 2 or 3 innings right there. And if you can do that and do what Lincecum did, do what Porcello did, and do what Ramiro Mendoza did, that is going to go a long way to having the Toronto Blue Jays possibly spending a long time this October playing some serious October baseball. When we come back from this break, I have a eerily similar suggestion to the Toronto Blue Jays if they want to the Milwaukee Brewers, I'm sorry, for doing the same thing. Another team that's had, look at, the Brewers have had some interesting situations with their bullpen. I think that they've had some slumps in their bullpen recently. And I think doing this suggestion is going to give them the depth to, I don't know, make the first World Series in their team's history since 1982. All right, let's hear from our good friends over at Gametime. I am going to be going to a ball game soon. My buddy Chris is going to be taking me to a Dodger game. And let me tell you something, there's nothing better than going to a baseball game with friends. It's fantastic. It's a great conversation. You have great conversations, great memories. It's wonderful. And what did Chris use to get our tickets? I'll tell you what he did. He used Gametime. It's the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by a Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price, plus all fees are included. So the price you see, that's the price you pay. And Chris got us tickets. We could see exactly the view from our seats at Chavez Ravine before we buy it. And he used a zone deal. He picked the section. He knows where I like to sit. And so Gametime picks the seats, and Chris saved big. And it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that any of us have ever bought tickets before. What you got to do is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Now, the NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 if your bet wins, and you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, FanDuel is great because it fits exactly how I like to bet: player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action goes on. And it makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sunday. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right. Hey, we got something we need to ask you here. And by the way, thanks so much for listening to the show. Locked On wants to hear from you. We put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcast even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes the survey will be entered a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. And thank you so much for helping us out. All right. The Milwaukee Brewers just keep on chugging. They're chugging along. Today they played the Arizona Diamondbacks. Woodruff got the victory in that game. And he struck out a bunch. He struck out 8 in 5 2/3 innings. He let up too many runs. But the Brewers wound up winning the game 7-5, which at this point, as I've said before, it's binary. You're just trying to win games at this point. Yelich continued to get some big hits. And again, the Brewers and the Blue Jays are eerily similar. They're both teams that have some big recognizable players, but it's not like they're being carried by a single superstar. They have depth, and they have depth up and down the lineup, which means you're not relying on one player. Now, William Contreras can hit some big home runs, is having a fine season. Christian Yelich has had some big games recently. But, they're not getting anything from Jackson Chourio right now, who's on the injured list. They're getting a lot from Isaac Collins, by the way, who is very quietly putting together a Rookie of the Year season. Bryce Terang, who is just having a solid all-around season. It's one of the reasons, and Andrew Vaughn continues to hit. It's one of the reasons why the Brewers are so hard to top, because there's not one person carrying them. Now, they've also had some bullpen issues recently. Now, one person who has stepped up big time has been Abner Uribe, the 25-year-old. I believe he got the save again today. I saw he was pitching before. Yeah, Uribe got the save, his third save, has lowered his ERA to 1.71, and it's allowed to give the Brewers a little more depth in that pen. Aaron Ashby pitched well today, as did Nick Mears. But they've had a couple issues in the last few weeks there. They had some big blown saves as well. And I've been preaching, especially in terms of the Misarowski situation, that maybe, just maybe, the super reliever situation would be best for him. Now, Misarowski right now, it's strange, because if the season ended right now, you would see that Misarowski has 9 career starts and an ERA of 4.19 and has been an all-star. Tim Salmon never became an all-star. Kirk Gibson never became an all-star. Jacob Misiorowski is an all-star. Now, I don't think this is a Tyler Green situation quite yet. Look up who he is if you don't want to know what I'm talking about here. And Misarowski, of course, exploded on the scene with his first few starts, but he's become human since. His overall stats, 4.19 ERA. He has struck out 55 batters in 38 2/3 with 20 walks along the way. Obviously, he's an extraordinarily talented pitcher, but the image of him being a bolt of lightning and a potential ace has kind of slowed down, as has their desire to have him pitch lots of innings. Well, you have about a month, and I've made the suggestion before that you say, hey, you're going to face the order 1 through 9. You're going to face them once. And hopefully that'll be 3 innings. So you face 1 through 9 and get them all. And if it's so much harder, first time through the order, you do great and you're watching his innings. Well, if you have the Uribes, you have the Mears, you have the Ashbys, and eventually you get the McGills in the world back, then if you have Misarowski in there, all of a sudden you have a great weapon to be using in a postseason situation. Freddie Peralta is having a phenomenal season as a pitcher for the Brewers. You can't ask for a better season. He's giving them everything. He strikes out more than he pitches each inning. He throws to a low ERA. He gives you a bunch of innings per start. He's been terrific. Quinn Priester has been terrific. Jose Quintana has done his job. And if you can rely on Woodruff, you can rely on Patrick, you can rely on, someone else, along the way, DL Hall, I don't know, to allow Misarowski to be a pitcher who comes in and faces the opposition's order 1 through 9 once. You go through the order once and you say, okay, now maybe 2 or 3 innings tops, and give you that as a weapon in October. Have them start doing it now. And you don't make it a surprise. If you want to say every 4 days, you're going to face 9 batters. And you schedule it in. Heck, have it be on a Woodruff start. That was the suggestion I made before. Have the 2 of them be in conjunction. You start Woodruff, and then he pitches until he needs relief. And you don't bring Misarowski. You always bring in Misarowski in a clean inning. So let's say Woodruff pitches, and all of a sudden you need to get out of the inning. So in comes Mears, gets him out of the inning in the 5th or 6th, and boom, Misarowski comes in the 6th or 7th. And if it comes in the 7th, if all goes well, he pitches to the end. If not, you get a couple innings. You squeeze a couple innings out. You're going to have to pitch pitchers out of their comfort zone in the postseason, because you're not going to have 5 starting pitchers. But if you have a talent like him and you're not ready for him to be the ace, but you are ready for him to be part of a championship caliber team, then let's think outside the box a little bit, because right now the Red Sea has parted, and the opportunity for a team like the Milwaukee Brewers to win the whole kit and also the caboodle has shown up. And like Faye Dunaway said in Network, it's been delivered to us on a silver platter. Let's not blank this up. And that's exactly what has happened with the Milwaukee Brewers. And the fact that they have a month to play with. Nobody's catching the Brewers. The Cubs aren't going to catch the Brewers. What are you, nuts? What are you, nuts? So you have a month to say, hey, here's what's going to happen. Every 4 days, you're going to face 9 batters. And that's going to be a role. And in the postseason, every 4 games, you're going to face 9 batters. So if you get to, let's say you have that tandem in game 3 of the division series, and you win that series, and by game 3 or 4 of the LCS, you use him again. He's a weapon that you use. And you, in that situation, you can also help the bullpen as it is right now. The Brewers are 82-50. They've already clinched a winning season. I think that was the goal for this Brewers team at the beginning of the year. Let's just have a winning season. Well, guess what? It's not even September. We've got about a week to go until we get to September, and they've already won their 82 games that I think most Brewer fans thought was a solid goal for them. They can go into the final month of the season and say, Jacob, this is your role. We are not going to, we're not going to drop this on you at the beginning of the playoffs. We're going to start doing it right now. And let me tell you something, folks. If you think this is a crazy idea, let me know why. Let me know why, when the Brewers have a weapon like this, why they shouldn't find themselves in a position to actually use this pitcher. Kind of like what Tampa Bay did when they had David Price, who at the time virtually nobody saw. And they were able to turn him into a weapon in the postseason. Or like Frankie Rodriguez did when the Angels won the World Series in 2002. Nobody freaking saw Frankie Rodriguez. So you have a chance to do that. And the Rays won the pennant that year, and the Angels won the World Series. Wouldn't that look nice in Milwaukee? All right, let's hear from our friends over at Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code SEASON and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You could make $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid just to make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out at any time to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now by using my limited time promo code SEASON for a limited 25 cent per gallon bonus. That's promo code SEASON. Offers may vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and conditions. Hey, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. For your second listen, keep it right here on this channel for the all-new MLB game night. Every game, every night, until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB channel on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Do you know who must be really, really frustrated right now are Cleveland fans? Cleveland fans, the Guardians today had their lunch handed to them. What was the final score of that game? As my mom would say, the final score was a lot to not enough. The Rays beat the Guardians 9-0. 9-0, which is the same score if the Guardians didn't show up. That's the exact same score if the game had to be forfeited. And that's just rotten. About 10 games ago, the Guardians pulled to within half a game of the New York Yankees. And there was talk of the Yankees lost and the Rays won, or the Guardians won, that Cleveland would leapfrog them into the final wild card spot. Well, the Guardians have lost 9 of 10 since then. And they got to be kicking themselves because they've been losing to teams that they really could beat. I mean, the Rays are not a terrible team, but they're not a 9-0 loss at home in a critical game. That's going to basically torpedo their season. And by the way, the Rangers aren't much better. The Rangers got into a playoff spot a few weeks ago and were hovering just a game or so behind New York and a game or so behind Seattle for that final spot. And they had Eovaldi pitching. They had DeGrom pitching. They had Bochy as the manager. And they've been dreadful. DeGrom lost today. The Angels shut him out 4-0. The Angels. Now, the Angels are a little bit better than they were last year, but come on, folks. What are we doing here? So, look, this is, and by the way, as I'm recording this, the Mariners are beating the Padres and the Dodgers are beating the Reds. So that's great news for the Mets because the Mets wound up clobbering the Philadelphia Phillies 13-0. And and great news for the Dodgers if they hold on to the 6-0 score because they'll pick up a full game on San Diego and they just have to tie San Diego. And the Seattle Mariners, well, they get to push the Rangers a little bit further away. They get to pitch Cleveland a little bit further away, and they get to hold serve with the Yankees, who beat up Washington, and nobody seems to care. But if you are wait, how did Kansas City play? I actually don't know if Kansas. You're going to hear me discover. Oh, Kansas City lost to the White Sox as Kansas City's trying to crawl back into the race. Here's why you can't circle the calendar and say, well, that's an easy win. That's an easy win. Because the Royals, as they're climbing back into it, okay, we're going to play the White Sox, and here we go. Yeah, here we go. You lost 7-0 to the White Sox. 7-0. And while the people who completely are going to discount everything the Yankees just did, well, they were terrible over the weekend, but they did beat the Nationals, and they have to do that in order to keep serve. So I'm not going to jump up and down that they beat the Nationals 10-5, but they won the game and they pushed the Cleveland and Texas a little further away, and Kansas City as well. But the really good teams are Toronto and Milwaukee. And if they listen to me and take my suggestion to start doing this now so these players get used to this situation, they could have a super deep pitching staff for the postseason. Let's talk about the trivia question. Who are the only 3 pitchers to win 200 games as a New York Yankee? All those great Yankee teams, dynasties, times where they won multiple championships in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, not the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. None since then, but consistently putting up great players, having a great roster. But only 3 pitchers in Yankee history have ever won 200 games as a Yankee. Who are they? Put your answer in the comment section. And there you go. Talking about the Blue Jays and the Brewers, who are truly the dominant teams of this year, and giving them a little advice to follow previous champions and get that complete bullpen going and giving their starting pitchers the new role that can help lead them to that elusive title. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.